Thank you very much, and let me extend a warm and pleasant good Monday morning to you members of the media. And thanks for holding on to cover this very important statement by the Office Workers Trade Union in response to statements made last Saturday by the Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. But before we go into our response to those statements made by the Prime Minister, let me first of all alert you to the different trade unions that are representing the different umbrella body accompanying me here this morning. I want to start by introducing Comrade Michael Hollis, no stranger to the trade union movement, and Trinidad and Tobago, the General Secretary of the National Trade Union Center, and the President of the Civil and Water Motor Trade Union. And then we have Shane Bulu, Treasurer of the Steelworkers Union of Trinidad and Tobago. Also, Steelworkers is also a member of the Joint Trade Union Movement. Then we have Douglas, Vice President, Southwestern Branch from the Trinidad and Tobago Postal Workers Union. Yeah. We also have joining us here now the President General of the Contractor and General Workers Union, Sister Colin McGee. And we also have the General Secretary of the Contractor and General Workers Union, Comrade Arthur Stewart, and G.of Wilson, the Assistant General Secretary of the Contractor and General Workers Union. And these are the unions that are accompanying the OWTU here in this press conference this morning. And of course, later on we will be going to Mayaro, and I'll make a separate statement about that after dealing with this most important issue. But later on, we all will be journeying to Mayaro, where we will continue the campaign of alerting the population, the members of the Mayaro community, to the dangers of having their rights stripped away and not having to make a choice. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. That is in relation to the mandatory vaccination, which we are against. And remember, we always start by saying that we are not an anti-vax movement, we are pro-choice, and we are against, in that regard, we are totally and radically against the issue of mandatory vaccination. Now, last Saturday, the country would have witnessed we would have witnessed the incoherent rant by the Prime Minister as he got angry about something. And that's something that got him so angry, it impaired his judgment. He had the wrong prescription. His prescription was not straight as a result of him being clouded by anger. You see, this person is a person, once he gets vexed, he goes all over the place, he's incoherent, he feeds the population misinformation, and some of the misinformation was not for the first time. And I want to to submit this morning that he purposely attempted to supplant in the minds of the people, of the population, particular misinformation, as he attacked openly the trade union movement. Prime Minister attacking the trade union movement, but more specifically attacking the oilfields workers trade union, and making statements that some of them not for the first time we heard it, but every time we hear him with those statements, we condemn it, and we condemn it to be untrue. We condemn it to be misinformation. We condemn those statements to be lies, outright lies. And therefore this morning, before we go any further, we just want to illustrate the character of the person that we are dealing with. The person that is the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The person who has the responsibility to lead the country. And the person in whom we're supposed to have confidence and trust, but which person continues to peddle, purposely peddle, misinformation, and not for the first time, and therefore lacks the credibility to even lead a government. And that is why I would have said it. Different leaders of the trade union movement would have said it, that we do not trust the Prime Minister and his government. But this morning we want to deal specifically with him, because it was him who launched that unprovoked attack on the trade union movement, and we'll tell you why, what got him so angry in a while. But first, we want to kind of put pieces of the puzzle together, because you see, we are forgetful people in this country, and they wonder, and therefore we forget vital information, critical information, at a time when we're supposed to take critical decisions. And therefore we want to put some of those information, to package it, put it together, to have you assess the credibility of the person with whom we are dealing, certainly the person who would have launched that frontal attack on the oilfields workers trade union and on me on Saturday. Now let's go.
It raises a question, ladies and gentlemen. If they can't speak the truth in small things, imagine what they will do in big things. My mother used to say, show me a liar and I'll show you a thief.
The government is not closing down Petrotrin. And in case you were just opening your fridge and you didn't hear that when you closed the door, let me repeat it. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is not closing down Petrotrin.
It has been very clear that all the employees of Petrotrin will exit the company. All. So do we get that clear so that nobody has to call me about 10 o'clock in the night to find me? How many of us going again? How many of them going again? All.
My mother used to say, show me a liar and I'll show you a thief.
All right, let's continue.
They were never legitimate emails. So you could not have traced what was given to what was there in the account, because it was never provided, it was never there. It was something that was typed out by someone.
The facts about Emailgate are clear. The then opposition leader Keith Rowley came to the Parliament in May 2013 and accused then Prime Minister Kamran Prasad Bisesa of conspiracy.
This email also under the heading urgent to Captain Gary Griffith at hotmail.com from whoever Anan at gmail.com is.
He said, something is not right, but that she knows too much.
The opposition leader reading excerpts from an email he alleged was in reference to a Guardian newspaper reporter who broke the story on the early proclamation of Section 34. Dr. Rowley said that this was one of 31 emails written over a 17-day period. Last September, he received it from a whistleblower.
Does she drive? Walk? Do you know of movements? And it says, we have a problem. Things are getting heated. We need access to taps in the DPP office.
The then opposition leader Keith Rowley came to the parliament and accused Kamla Persad-Bissessar of conspiracy to commit murder, all under the guise of parliamentary privilege. What is parliamentary privilege, you might ask? Well, it's a license to say whatever you want and has no civil or criminal liability for the statements you make.
What I'm prepared to do is to use the protection of the privilege of Parliament and to do it offense too bad for them.
It's legal immunity from prosecution for slander. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar sat and listened to the accuser and then sent all of the printed emails to the Commissioner of Police for investigation, took her computer and her mobile phone to the police for inspection, requested that Google make public if the emails were real, and opened herself to a second investigation by the Integrity Commission. Today, however, the police investigation, the Integrity Commission, and even Google have said that the emails produced by Dr. Rowley are fake. And according to Orville London, the then deputy leader of the PNM and THA chief secretary, he said that Dr. Rowley would pay the price if his information is wrong. London declared the emails are earth-shattering and must be resolved. This is the big one. This is a game decider, and at the end of the exercise, there would only be one man or one woman standing. Today, Kamla has been vindicated, and as such, the only one standing. Senior counsel Israel Khan is quoted as saying that Emailgate was a diabolical and sinister plot to assassinate the character of the former Prime Minister.
Now that the acting Commissioner of Police has indicated that she has declared about 3-4 years ago. What has happened? They wanted her to go into an election with this thing hanging over her head. It affected her the polls. So it was not only one of the greatest sports that ever perpetrated on the country, but one of the worst injustices that ever has been done to a person and a Prime Minister.
Well, again, the document, the correspondence that was given, they were never emails. You would have seen difference in the dates, difference in the font, the difference in the there was an email account that was not legit. So it was the question in other words could be answered that they were never legitimate emails.
They were very serious allegations. These allegations, I suspect, brought the government down. This is the first time in the history of the Commonwealth that such a political fraud was perpetrated upon the public. I am now calling upon the Director of Public Prosecution to request that the police set up a team of officers to investigate the now Prime Minister, then leader of the opposition, whether he conspired with person unknown or person known in order to pervert the cause of public justice.
The man should do the honourable thing and resign now. You see, this issue, these lies that he told in the Parliament, didn't just impact here in Trinidad and Tobago. This made international news around the world. Around the world. It was the most corrupt act on his part. It was the most dishonest, but he didn't care as long as he making the grab for power. He didn't care. He didn't care it was destroying the image of our country. He still doesn't care. He didn't care about that. And this has been really one of the biggest scandals in the Commonwealth, based on lies. Therefore, the gentleman should do the right thing and resign.
Rowley wanted to become a Prime Minister without being a leader. He never came up with a plan, so nothing is happening.
Very important and truthful information there. And we are going through these clips, and you may have seen them or you may not have seen them before, but that we wish to remind all of the character of the person that we are dealing with. We didn't say all of that. We didn't do the investigation, the police did. Google did, and so on. And to date, there has not been an apology to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for putting them through all of that misinformation, and of course, to the former Prime Minister and all of the persons named in his allegation. Using the cover and the privilege of Parliament to spread lies. And that has been established, that has not been challenged by him. One of the greatest frauds in the region perpetrated by any individual, any member of Parliament. Let's go. Let's continue.
Have appointed Mr. McLean, Balgobin, and another person in the initial stage when you gave a guideline to the country, that these are the people going to help you to draft a way forward for Sandals.
Yes? No, sir, no, sir. Please, no, sir. No, sir, you are quite wrong. Mr. Motley was only invited to work with his government on the issue of gas. Gas, in dealing with the gas companies, in dealing with the gas master plan. That's where Mr. Motley had absolutely nothing to do with Sandals. For whatever note you have, they take up.
Okay, because I'll send you the evidential proof. Because I have it.
Well, if you have it,
I'll send it for you because we give you the truth.
Mr. Amar, I am head of this government. I brought Mr. Motley in and begged him to come and help with the gas problem. He chaired a committee of the Cabinet Subcommittee of Energy, and the committee did, but he was never involved with Sandals.
What's happening is that we are looking and we are wanting that labeling to be able to be working on it. So to further this today, the Cabinet agreed to appoint a team of people, and we are grateful that they've agreed to serve some of those who have already been informed. And that team is to be headed by Mr. Wendell Motley, to include Mr. Terence Farrell, who is the chairman of the Economic Advisory Board, Dr. Ralph Malgubin, Mr. Michael Small, a small hotelier in Tobago, Mr. Glenn Leslie, a small farmer in Tobago, Mrs. Nadira Lida, who is head of the Public-Private Partnership in the Ministry of Finance, and 2 reps to be named by the Tobago House of Assembly. And this group will be the one that will do the negotiations for what is to happen with respect to this project that we are pursuing for Sandals in Tobago.
You hear lie? That is lie. Lie? You hear lie? That is lie. Lie? You hear?
As Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, head of the government, I want to say publicly to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and all those who want to listen, that it is the intention of the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the coming days to sign off with the OWTU on the beginning of the way back for the Petrotrin refinery, known today as Guadalcanal, as soon as the OWTU is ready to commit itself to what I've said here in this statement today and provide its commitment by its signature. That is to follow.
Thank you.
And when that would have been done, the people of Trinidad and Tobago would have solved yet another one of its major problems.
Well, the problem we have to solve is the problem with the peddler of misinformation. And that is why, members of the media, we sought to package all of these misinformation and lies so that you can have a full picture of the individual that we are dealing with. He's not only alien to the truth, you know, he has a deep and abiding disloyalty for veracity. He's a reorganizer of the facts, or simply put, an assassinator of truthfulness. That is the person that we are dealing with. So let's go to where we are right now, some of the latest installments. And mind you, those are just some of the misinformation that was captured, those that you would have seen. But let's go to the Saturday meeting, that incoherent rant that we had on Saturday, that something get him so vexed that he attacked the whole trade union movement and OWTU and me, myself. And I'm saying this morning that there will be no discrimination by us as to how we respond to who attack us. Whoever attack us, we will respond. Be him Prime Minister or man in the street. Because those who seek to destroy the Oilfields Workers Trade Union will always end up destroying themselves. And let's go.
Yeah. You running a union in this country, and the Prime Minister has to sit down and talk to you on an issue pertinent to all your members, and you refuse to come. Okay? As Prime Minister, having to deal with this petroleum situation, having put them, two of them, on the evaluation committee, as soon as they saw what had to be done and know what had to be done and didn't want to be part of anything like that, they jumped off the committee and come inside the office in blue shirt to rave and shout at me. I invited him to sit down with me as Prime Minister. I am heading the cabinet. I want to share with him what the cabinet is thinking and what the information is and how we can go together, and refuse to come.
I want to say categorically, openly, for yet another occasion, because he made that statement sometimes, incidentally, some 3 years ago. I want to say categorically that that statement is a lie. It's a lie. That the Prime Minister never invited me to sit with him. I challenge him to show me where he would have invited me to sit with him and discuss petroleum matters. I challenge him to produce, whether it is email or phone records or text messages or WhatsApp, yeah, or a letter inviting me to sit down with him. You wouldn't find it. Like email gate, you wouldn't find it, because it just does not exist. I want to say categorically, when he says that he invited me to sit with him, the Prime Minister told a blatant lie. And I challenge him to come up with that. And may I also say that we have taken a principal position, even if there's an invitation like that. No President General of the OWTU is going to sit down by himself with no Prime Minister and discuss no matter in secret. So that if he had it in his mind, don't come now and tell a lie. That is not going to happen. If we need to speak with the Prime Minister, we write officially. We make it public. We alert you members of the media. When we are going in to discuss, and I go with a team, and when we are coming back out, we say what that meeting would have entailed and the results of the discussions. And when they want to talk with us, they write through their parliamentary secretary. Yes? Or the permanent secretary in the office of the Prime Minister. And by letter, an invitation is given. There's no such letter requesting a meeting with me and I refuse. That is a lie. Rowley lied. Yeah? And I'm not afraid to say that. You see, that is how he goes about. He wants to make you feel that he is pious and sanctimonious and so on. And that he is so holy and endowed. And that he gave his word. And his word means something. Look what he did there before the election. And after the election is a horse of a different color. With that same Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Let's go.
Yeah. You running a union in this country, and the Prime Minister.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And I also want to, before we go to the next clip, he made a statement. Let's go back to the way he talked about two people the union had on the committee.
Yeah. You running a union in this country, and the Prime Minister has to sit down and talk to you on an issue, pertinent to all your members, and you refuse to come. Okay? As Prime Minister, having to deal with this Petrotrin situation, having put them, two of them, on the evaluation committee, as soon as they saw what had to be done and know what had to be done and didn't want to be part of anything like that, they jumped off the committee.
All right. So that's another lie. That's another lie. In fact, we have one of our senior officers who was one of our representatives on that committee here this morning. That's Gregory Machan. So Gregory Machan, accompanied by Comrade David Abdullah at the time, were members of that Lashley committee. And by the way, let me just say, that Lashley committee never recommended the shutting down of Petrotrin. Never recommended at all the shutting down of Petrotrin. And both our representatives, David Abdullah and Gregory Machan, never jumped off any committee. In fact, it was those same two representatives that presented the final report in the Prime Minister's office. So you realize it was those same two representatives that he said jump off and go on in the street. They were the ones that presented the final report in the Prime Minister to the same person. So apparently like we have some sort of bipolarism taking place there. But he could jump out of body and jump back in body. But the point is, this is a serious business. And when he castigates and he labels people recklessly like that, what in fact he is doing is using his position as Prime Minister to denigrate and to make and to cast aspersions and so on, and to tell lies, open lies on people. So nobody jumped off any committee. And Dr. Rowley, we challenge you this morning, both members of the committee, Comrade David Abdullah, then what, General Secretary, and Comrade Gregory Machan, then Vice President, Executive Vice President of the OWTU. And why? Because General Secretary and Comrade Gregory Machan had all of these years, over 30 years, 35 years experience in Petrotrin's operation, in various parts of Petrotrin's operation, and could have brought to the value to the discussion in that committee. And may I again remind you, that committee never recommended the shutting down of Petrotrin. Let's go to another clip. All lies so far.
I said that in the restructured arrangements, the government is prepared to offer the employees an employee stock ownership, meaning in the new company that we're going to form, whether it's Heritage or Paria, in that new restructured arrangement, we will give the employees stock. Let them become a part owner of it. And to my horror and shock, my speech had not echoed around the room at the end that night when the answer was go to hell with Esau. We want no part of no Esau. Well, let me tell all of them to know what that meant. I, as Prime Minister, was prepared then to offer as much and to encourage the cabinet to offer them up to 20% of the new company.
All right, stop right there again. Here's another one of what he actually said. No, he is referring to his address to the nation in 2018 when he fooled the population. You remember that? Saying that if Petrotrin don't shut down, there will be no schools, there will be no roads, there will be no hospitals, there will be no money to go around and so on. And you, the people, will suffer so that they have to shut down Petrotrin. He made the case, and then he said this.
The refining assets of Petrotrin can now be put in a separate company for opportunity attention. The OWTU will be given the first option to own and operate it if they wish, on the most favorable terms.
Right. Those two lines, the opportunity to own and operate it, are the most favorable terms. So a number of things wrong with that. But the first thing I want to make clear, there was never any offer, then or otherwise, to the union for employees to have what? To own shares, stock ownership and so on, and shares in their new arrangement after they would have shut down Petrotrin. What he did that night is to call a bluff by striking those two lines saying that he will give the OWTU an offer to the first option to purchase it at the most favorable terms. Well, immediately we said no. And it is history that we would have told the country that we would have subsequently sent a letter to him indicating our intention to purchase, because we would have had a number of financiers and a number of support coming internationally to assist us in the purchase. So he lied. There was never any statement of stock ownership. That's a lie. And the part about favorable terms, well, you would not like to know the amount of pressure that we would have experienced in attempting to purchase those assets. And that the reason why it finally could not go through, we made the point repeatedly, is because they had heavy lien on the refinery, as indeed other assets of TPHL, of Petrotrin. They borrowed heavily on it, and that it was not made debt-free. And therefore, as we moved to acquire it, we could not go any further with their offer that they would have given us in the Parliament. And that when we made that public, just as they did in December, or was it December? With the property tax, they get an next extension. And then at the end of January, they say you get an next extension. So that people will say, well, look, the government gave an extension and so on, so make out your property tax form. They would have given a month, 30 days, and then some 15 days for us to raise some 500 million. Because we came to them, that's how we won the bill, with our financiers ready to purchase. They made an offer of a 3-year moratorium, 10 years to pay. That was their offer. And obviously when an offer like that is made, you then release your financiers. Fast forward to us attempting to execute that offer, accept that offer, make reality that offer. We were faced with the problem coming from their bondholders and so on, that said to our company that, listen, that offer that the government made cannot go through because the government owes, simply put, owes enormous sums of money on these assets. These assets are tied up, and therefore the offer they make, it can't go through. Even while we were discussing, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, my dear friends, while we were discussing, negotiating as to how we are going to accept that offer of a 3 years moratorium, 10 years to pay, we would have released our finances because you're now getting 3-year moratorium, 10 years to pay. Even as we were discussing how that is going to be executed, they were borrowing unknowing to us on the same assets. So behind our backs, imagine you planning to buy a house. You already have an offer. And while you're discussing how you're going to pay, and you, the person who's selling you that house, they borrowed and bought the house and not telling you. But that such was the clinical approach of our comprehensive international team, they would have investigated and found out that they were, these people who we appointed to talk with us, the board of TPHL and so on, that they were borrowing money while we were talking. So there are a number of reasons why that arrangement could not go through. But the point I want to emphasize for yet another occasion is that all that little extension that they play was just a ruse to get them through elections and so on. It's just a ruse to set us up. And why did we do it? Because we felt that we owe it to the workers to examine every possible opportunity to put workers back to work, because we remember he had workers off their jobs. And that is why we would have invested time and resources in pursuing that. But they are a very dishonest bunch, headed by a dishonest person. And to come now in 2022 and to peddle that lie, I will be failing in my duty as the leader of this union if we did not set the record straight for yet another time. Dr. Rowley lied. So when he said that we had no money, that is a lie. It is on the basis of the finances that were sitting with us at the table we won the bid. They countered with an offer of 3 years moratorium, 10 years to pay, a total of 13 years. Obviously, that was a better offer than us having to do debt financing by the finances that we would have come with. And so we would have thanked the finances and released them. I'm making the point again for clarity that as we try to execute that offer that the Minister of Finance would have made in the Parliament to the patriotic energies, we found out that there was heavy lien. Go back to what he would have said on that night. It would have been debt-free and set aside for the purchase. That did not happen. And as we talk about not having money, they would have given a month as if they want the public to side with them to say, well, yes, they're giving time and they're giving a little more time. And then a 15 days to go back now, because the other arrangement failed, to raise $500 million. They themselves can't raise 500 million US in a month or 2 months or 6 months, as admitted by the Minister of Finance. but that after the last 15 days, we would have submitted to the Minister of Finance, asking for him and the Cabinet's consideration another offer of financing by a particular financier. They did not respond to that. The Cabinet and the Minister of Finance did not respond to the last proposal before them. They are yet to respond to that. And this, may I say, is engaging the attention of some very interesting people, as much as I want to say on that at this moment. But when he says that we did not have money, I want to say very calmly this morning, unlike the incoherent rant that we witnessed on Saturday, that he lied, because the Cabinet is yet to respond to offer a proposal coming from the company identifying, albeit it would have been difficult, but identifying a financier that was willing to stand with us. And they close off all discussions because they know what they want to do. They know why they shut down Petrotrin. And that has nothing to do with restructuring Petrotrin. Because the union, coming out of the recommendations of the Lashley Committee, the union would have signed an agreement with the board dated April the 3rd, 2018, agreeing to the restructuring and actually began the process of restructuring. The union, that's the recognized majority union, G.of OWTU, looking at how we can restructure the company to make it viable, to ensure its profitability, to ensure its safe operation, and at the same time what? Keep the company in operation, keep the refinery in operation, so that the country would not have to undergo the stress of loss of foreign exchange and so on, loss of forex, to purchase fuels. In other words, the company would have been restructured, and while it was restructured, all of your turnarounds and so on would have been completed. We would have continued to produce our own fuel. We would have continued to maintain a level of economic independence, fuel independence, and don't have to depend on bad fuel coming from cheap fuel, coming from wherever they could scramble to get it. That is what we would have committed to. That we would have committed to coming out of the Lashley Committee, which we said never recommended the shutting down of Petrotrin. To date, the country is yet to be told who recommended the shutting down of Petrotrin. And may I just say that on the basis of the Cabinet going back on its word, shutting down the company, while we had an agreement, a registered agreement to restructure the company, we took that matter to court, and we won that matter in the court. We were vindicated in the court, because the court found them to be very nefarious, very underhanded, because they wanted to know why it is there's an agreement, why it is we begin to participate in that agreement to restructure the company. But at the same time, up comes somebody with whose prescription is not straight, something get him vexed, and they shut down Petrotrin and all the workers who put all of these 45,000 people under hardship and so on. And of course, put the country under hardship as a result of shutting down our symbol of economic independence and fuel independence, that is the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago. So, why the shutdown? Why was Petrogen shut down? He mentioned something about how heritage is a success story. But before we go to that, let me just show you members of the media why he's getting so vexed. Because you see, the issue of shutting down Petrogen, I always make the point that the Petrogen story is far, far from over. And that in monitoring their activities of their new arrangement with the different companies, Paria, Heritage and so on, TPHL, we continue to observe neglect and waste and falling production and failure to manage properly and failure to ensure proper safety standards and all of those things. Running down the operation more than anything else. That is what he would have considered to be a success story of heritage. But here's what gets him vexed. On Friday, I would have said to the media that we are vindicated because S&P, Standard & Poor's, the international rating agency, the same agency that they like to boast that gives them a good rating. You see, it's like a survey. When it come out good for them, they like that. But when the same rating agency downgrade them, nobody talk about that. So he would have preferred that this pass over the heads of everybody in the country in this pandemic, in COVID, and nobody talk about that. But here come out of it you who's so fast and out of place to raise this issue of Standard & Poor's downgrade. And this is why he got on how he got on last week. We got under his skin by pointing to the report of S&P downgrade of TPHL. So TPHL downgrade, no, Standard & Poor's downgrade TPHL because, among other things, here's what they say. A long article, and I invite you to read the article. Additionally, the rating agency asks Additionally, the rating agency added that TPHL faces near-term maturity that could pressure its liquidity if not addressed within the next 4 months. Hence, Standard & Poor's had lowered the credit rating of TPHL to B from BB, and the issue level rating to B from BB on its 9.75% senior secure notes due in 2026. So, Standard & Poor's recognizing that information, apart from that, information on the fiscal year 2019 was not submitted for TPHL. And as a result of that, and other findings and failure within TPHL, S&P downgraded Trinidad Petroleum Holding. Let's just rewind a bit. Remember how he was saying that how it will be downgraded, and if Petrogen downgraded, the country will be downgraded, and if we downgraded, all hell will break loose and we will can't get no money and credit will be expensive and all of those things, he made out the case. So we had a shut down Petrotrade. We are in 2022. Standard & Poor's have an issue still for 2019. And they still get downgraded. And when we say we are vindicated, we are not happy to say that. But we wish to point out to an otherwise unsuspecting public that here it is. What we were saying was going to happen, indeed, is happening. And it is happening at a cost. So instead of him dealing with the issue of S&P downgrades, he attacks the union for pointing to the fact that they are downgraded. The typical age-old strategy of shoot the messenger, assassinate the messenger. Because he does not have COVID as an excuse for 2019. In 2019 there was no COVID, so he can't use COVID as an excuse, because these days everything is COVID. Rainfall, COVID. Flood, COVID. Man dead in accident, COVID. Crime going up, COVID. Bad roads, COVID. Everything is COVID. Yeah? So he can't use COVID as an excuse. So he attacked the messenger. And all he was saying is that, listen, we are vindicated because we were pointing to that a long time ago. And there's more to come, you know. There's much more to come. Because I want you to just take a look at what is the success story right now in Heritage and in TPH. Let's take a look. Let's just show some clips. It's the condition of Heritage. Those are the assets. That's your otherwise petrol. Next clip. That's a success story. Yeah, that's another look at your success story. That's how it is now, eh? Those are the assets. If you go now, that is what you will see. That's last week? Yeah. That's in Heritage. That's your success story. It's offshore now. Yeah? No safety harness. Workers are exposed to the vagaries of the weather conditions, the open sea. No safety harness and so on. That's the success story. Because if they only raise any issue, that's a success story. They only raise any issue there, they will be fired. Yeah? Oil spill out in the sea. You wouldn't hear those things. But those are the success story that he talks about. Yeah? Yeah. Now we just want to show the golf course now. So that's the productive part that is neglected. The EMP and of course for parts of the refinery. Look at the golf course. Christine, you don't find that strange? The only thing maintained properly is the golf course. The only thing. And of course their friends get the contract to do that. They're being paid big money to do that. But the only thing maintained is the golf course. Trinidad and Tobago. Let us soak in for a while. So the success story that he talks about is a neglected exploration and production, all of the fields and so on. Offshore workers working unsafe, offshore assets deteriorating, and it's just a matter of time for another oil spill because they do not have the proper response and contingency in place. And while they will talk, and he will say all kinds of things because you don't know better, those are the facts. That's not another country, you know. That's Trinidad here in the southern basin of the country. That's his former Petrotrin. This is the golf course. Because golf is important. Golf is important for him and his chairman. So look at the condition of the golf course. And as if for it to remain on the memory of the media, let's go back to, that's a golf course, Golf course. Golf is important. Let's go back to one of the footage. Yeah. Friends, that is not important. That's a success story by itself. Yeah, Heritage is a success story. Heritage made what? 3.6 billion. But where that money gone? Where did that money go? If Heritage make all this money in profit, where did that money go? You need to ask the question. You see, those people that he's talking to, they wouldn't like talking themselves as PNN sycophant people. But we know differently. And we have a duty and responsibility to correct the misinformation. So out of the big profit he claimed that Heritage is a success story, where did that money go? How much taxes did Heritage pay for that particular year? And that is when? Last year? How much taxes did they pay? Is Heritage still enjoying tax holiday? Having been operating like a separate entity? Where's the roads and the hospitals and the schools and the beds and so on? And the efficient water, delivery of water to every citizen? Where are all of those things? Like he promised? Where are those things that you're supposed to get as you shut down Petrotrin? Where are those things that you're not getting, but that the country now has to pay in foreign exchange, forex, scarce foreign exchange that you can't get when you go to the bank? They have to fork out all of that money to buy fuel to sell it back in TT. Yeah. Just ask the question. And let's ask who benefited? Who benefited from the shutdown of Petrotrin? Well, recently there was a settlement of what? A settlement between a certain company and TPHL, where they were awarded what? Millions of dollars, tax-paying dollars, in a settlement, yeah, in a what? Out-of-court settlement, and few guaranteed future contracts with that particular company. And that TPHL or Petrotrin could have never win that case at all. Try as hard as they may, they would have lost that case. You know why? Because they shut down the company. All the workers gone home. Everybody who's supposed to give evidence, they make sure that those people are not around. Shut down the company. all the evidence that you would have been in particular areas of the company? Well, whither goes that? So there is no Petrotrin entity with its employees to continue that matter in court for Petrotrin to get justice, for the taxpayers to get justice. That didn't happen. And then there was a settlement. You didn't talk about that. And there was a settlement that didn't benefit the country, didn't benefit taxpayers, which benefit would not provide roads, wouldn't provide schools and beds and so on in the hospital, but will benefit certain people. That, my friends, he will not talk about. But you know something about this? The former commissioner which they got rid of, said something very interesting at a news conference sometime around June 14th last year. And here's what he said. He said that even though, whether or not there is a settlement, the probe is not over for the cops, for the police. So there's a police investigation taking place. I didn't make up this. This was news. This was news that we forgot. And even though all is settled, whenever you settle, if ever you settle, even though you settle, the police work is independent. And I can only guess that it is the independence of the former commissioner that cost him his job. When you're investigating that fault, I can only guess. One will ask the question, is it the independence of the former commissioner, Gary Griffith, that cost him his job because he's looking into matters that he should not look into? Is it that cost him his job? We ask the question. And I also want to ask the question to the current acting commissioner. Tell the country where this probe is at this point in time. Where this police investigation, where it is to date, and when that investigation will be completed. And that's rhetorical because we know the answer to that. But we want to put on record our query, our curiosity as to, is it that because Gary gone, investigation done, it's gone with Gary? Or is it that the police is not now independent and the police will be dancing to the beat of the politician's drum, and that such an important probe will be shut down? We ask the question to the now acting commissioner, what has happened to that investigation into the fake oil issue that cost this country millions and millions and millions of dollars, cost taxpayers and continue to cost taxpayers. You see, while all these things happen, while we have no roads, limited beds in hospital, people have to pay for medication, even though they are awarded at the hospital. All of their CDAP programs and so on fell apart. You can't get jobs. And if you get it, it is expensive. Cost of living, bread, flour, everything going up. Potholes in the road like if you don't now have potholes in the road, you have a road in the potholes. A little road, you already have potholes. People suffering in this country. While all of those things are happening, some people live in it large and so on. Some people live in it big. And those are the discussions that they don't want, that he don't want. So he gets on a tyrant and he attacks the G.of OWTU, he attacked the trade union movement, and he's threatening now to restructure our assets because he vexed. And all of those things because his prescription is not strict. The country is reeling under pressure. But we also reeling under pressure of misinformation. I just want to say to this Honorable Prime Minister, clearly this morning, I want to speak to this Honorable Prime Minister. That we will continue to raise all of these issues in the public domain in the interest of the public. The last time we checked, we are still a democracy here in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And nobody, absolutely nobody, just as we would have done with all of the previous governments, nobody would silence the Alphys Workers Trade Union and the trade union. No. We will call a spade a spade. We will call a lie a lie. And mind you, may I also say that if you want to call pot calling kettle black, if you want to talk about who dotish, your decision, you win 6 seats out of 12 in the Tobago House of Assembly election. And instead of sharing power, you decide to go back to the poll. You had 6, you end up with 1. You nearly get none. If that is not dotish, you tell me what is. You shut down a refinery that producing its own fuel here, fuel independence, making foreign exchange and so on. But you now hardly have foreign exchange, but you have to use the same scarce foreign exchange to purchase fuel from outside at whatever cost. So you shut down your own capacity to produce fuel, and you're purchasing fuel costing billions of dollars. If that is not dotish, you tell me what is. And of course, with COVID, you're making the case on the one hand, how COVID is so high, and the variant, Omicron variant is here, and that it's so bad. You're forcing people to take jabs. You're forcing workers to take jabs. And if they didn't take it, you're sending them home. They're going to be furlonged. You don't even know that you know what that means. They will be furlonged and so on. Workers will lose their jobs. Families will be traumatized. No food on their table. Breadwinners lost their jobs. You're forcing people to take that job. But at the same time, you have carnival. A taste of carnival. So when you ever hear, check Rio de Janeiro, check Miami, check Notting Hill, a taste of carnival is a taste of dotishness coming from a dotish person. So if there's anybody who dotish, check yourself, old man. You are the dotish one. Alright, so we want to pause here because we could go all day like this. Hold it like this. With information, because there's a lot of misinformation coming from this person. And I challenge him to challenge any one of those statements that we made here this morning as being incorrect. In fact, you saw it was him who was talking. But we want to end with this particular clip.
Well, let me tell you something, gentlemen. If Keith Rowley feels that that little boy attitude of sending text of private text messages between a commissioner and a prime minister, he sees it fit to go public. If I start to reveal text messages, there might very well be a snap election before the end of this year.
Let's think about that. And that's not me who say that. That's not what WTU say that. That's not the trade union movement who say that. That's the former commissioner exercising, of course, his independence. And is it that caused him his job? We want to thank you very much this morning for being very patient with us as we navigated our way through, very painfully navigated our way through all of these information that we brought to you, which essentially is misinformation and lies, where the common thread is one person here. And if there's anybody who noticed, well, let me just say finally, that you take God out of your thoughts. That's a dotish move to attack the trade union movement and the Orphans Workers Trade Union. Thank you very much. Any questions, or it speaks for itself? November. Yeah.
And so do you know the rate of depreciation? And given that since 2018, and the rejection, I'm sure the amount of money that paid for the government to be primary. I mean, is it good anything now? I mean, is it that the government is going to lose out on the amount of money that they're going to make? As compared to...
And that's the point. That's a very important question, because those assets would have deteriorated significantly from that time to now. You can't just put your vehicle out by the road and don't run it, don't start no maintenance and so on, and expect it to be good when you're ready to use it 3 years later down the road. And therefore the value of those assets ought to be reevaluated. And you might very well see that a plan unfold before our eyes, where their plan was to run it down to next to nothing and then give their friends it for absolutely nothing. In fact, enter into some kind of arrangements where they might even be paying their friends to operate it. But we wait and see how that will turn out. But to your question, you are correct. Those assets have deteriorated at the refinery, in the fields as you saw, offshore as you also saw here with some of those photographs that we took. Those are very recent, some of them even up to last week. And therefore, if care and attention and proper routine maintenance and so on is not given to those assets, they will deteriorate. And what Heritage is doing is very little maintenance or so, is just extracting and so on, and running down those assets on a daily basis. That's the success story that he talks about. Ask him when last he went offshore, or if he ever did. Ask him when last he went past the gate and go into and examine all of those assets in point of view. Ask him when last he went in the fields where that fire was. When you're talking about a success story. And then ask him who he has in charge of Heritage, who is the chairman of Heritage. And then ask him what are the qualifications, apart from being his partner. That fellow who is the chairman of Heritage, ask him what is his qualification to run some important assets, his partner. Okay? And his partner both in Heritage and of course in Paria. But then ask him when last he went on the golf course, because you know that has been good.
Just one last thing. Do you link the intended removal of the fuel subsidy to the fact that we don't use our gas anymore?
Last time. You what? Exactly. Yes, that's clearly that they are now compelled to remove it because the cushion we had before, where we would have been producing our own fuel, we do not now have that. And therefore, that is just a matter of time before we begin to feel it at the pumps. Just a matter of time.
What is the update on with respect to the request for proposals following the rejection of your offer, and they would have invited more RFPs? What is the status of that? Didn't you all?
We don't have any information on the update of that. We have our suspicions, and at another occasion we will say what those are, but that there are some discussions I made the point earlier, that there are some discussions that we are having with very interesting people. And those people are our attorneys in that regard. Okay? We are talking to our attorneys about the entire fiasco and so on surrounding this whole issue of the offer, and this offer to go back out on RFP and so on, and that the proposal that they had before them that they never responded to. Yes, the cabinet never responded to that proposal. Okay? Very interesting developments with respect to Petrotrin and Heritage and TPHL. But his partner, you see, he get under his skin when we expose it. Because his partner and them running that. The partner with no experience. Lawyer partner and so on. The next one, in point up here, we don't know what experience he has. But they're running complex operations. And the result is what we show you. That is the success. Yeah?
I mean, even during the people's partnership, you know, see what happens and, you know, efforts to decrease production, the fact that they won't explore it, and if you're in cable, it doesn't change, right? Now, you were always saying that it seems that they were running on the company to reach a point of privatizing, right? Now, I'm just asking, if there's something similar like that happening here, do you think that
exactly, that's the trend. That's the trend. That's the motto. That's the intention of this government, to put public good into private hands. That is their intention. And at the end of the day, they and their financiers, their friends, they are the ones that will benefit at the expense of the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And when those products, those services become more expensive, it is you, the people, that will have to pay for the fact that it is public good transferred into private hands. And that is their motto. And the fact that they are going that way with WASA, there's the intention to sell home workers and to privatize. WASA, port, national flour mills, TT Post, and so on, Swimco, NP, you name it, if they are not stopped. In other words, they are reshaping the Republic, the Democratic Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, redesigning it in a way that is not beneficial to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we cannot, dare not, shall not remain silent while these things are occurring. Who makes law? Well, thank you very much. And thank you for your patience once again, for coming and covering this event and allowing us to take you through all of those painful lies and so on. They are lies, and the one common thread there is the person whose prescription is not straight. And you tell me who are the dotish ones. Yeah, I'll leave you to figure that out. Thank you very much.